Hey Pretty Girl Club. In this video, I want to talk about Ice Spice flopping. And I want to talk about this because I've noticed a hypocrisy to the point where I can't talk about Normani flopping because that's colorist, of course. But a lot of people are making videos saying that Ice Spice is flopping. But let's go ahead and start off by talking about Ice Spice's accolades and achievements. Ice Spice has 4 Grammy nominations. She has won multiple awards for her music. She has had multiple #1 hits. She has collaborated with some of the biggest artists of the decade, such as Taylor Swift and Nicki Minaj. But no, none of that is enough. You flopped, Ice Spice, because your song that you just did was apparently too repetitive or it was too similar to the last songs that you did. And I want to talk about this because I've noticed a hypocrisy when it comes to the online black community where they hold mixed race women or these lighter skinned women to such a high standard that they don't hold dark skinned unambiguous black women to. And what they're not realizing is that by holding someone to a high standard, you're actually proving that you put them on a higher pedestal. So notice how when I made my video about Normani, of course that's being a colorist, and also people were coming onto my channel saying things like, oh, well, her parents were sick, or, they were kind of, I don't want to say making excuses because I'm not trying to downplay her taking care of her family and stuff, but I've noticed that there's a tendency to almost downplay or pity or give a lot more sympathy to unambiguous music artists because people feel sad for them and they feel like you'll never even be mainstream anyway. And so I've noticed that you can't critique anyone who's unambiguous in the music industry. You can't say like, oh, her music is repetitive, her vocal range is bad, she doesn't really have a lot of variety, she's not good at switching things up, she's not very good with her artistry. You can't say that because then it means that you're being mean and you're being a hater. But notice how nobody keeps that energy when it comes to Ice Spice. Why? It's because people put Ice Spice on a high pedestal. The fact that Ice Spice even blew up so fast and like had all of these things going for her, that shows that she has at least some sort of skill. I mean, you had that one girl, Baby Storm, talking about how Ice Spice stole her friend group and then all of her friends started working with Ice Spice and they made her famous. Okay, so that shows that she at least would have some sort of social skill. Also, the guy who's making her beats, I can't remember his name, I think his name is like Riot or something. The guy who is producing her beats is also phenomenal at making beats, so clearly she is at least good at picking what producer to work with, unlike other artists. Not only that, but she's very active on social media. She talks her shit and she like does these crazy poses and stuff like that. She's very like open and free when it comes to her dancing and all that. But notice how Ice Spice is held to a very high standard because oftentimes when people put you on a high pedestal or when they feel like you are more privileged than them, then they expect perfection from you in every area. If you are seen as the pretty girl, if you're seen as the privileged girl, you're not allowed to have an off day. You're not allowed to have a song that doesn't do as well as all of the other songs. Meanwhile, if you are seen as underprivileged, then people are just grateful that you even came out with a song once every 5 years or once every couple of years. People are like, oh, well, at least you tried. Oh, good job. And it's almost as if they give these unambiguous women in the music industry almost like this consolation prize or like this pity. It's like having a pity fan. It's almost as if some people are fans of some of the unambiguous artists out of pity because that person feels deep down inside that that woman's skin tone or her blackness will somehow hold her back. And that's another hypocrisy because I see people saying, Ice Spice's light skin privilege ran out. And it's like, okay, well, if light skin privilege runs out, then that would imply that an unambiguous person can come and take their place or could come and, be more privileged than them. So, like, which one is it? Are you privileged and does your skin tone get you the fame? Or does that skin tone privilege run out at some point? And also, if all it takes is skin tone for somebody to make an album and be successful, what about all the light skinned people who did not make albums or the people who quote unquote failed or they stopped making music altogether? So notice how on one hand they will argue and try to discredit Ice Spice and they'll say she only got to where she is because she's light skinned. She only got to where she is because she's mixed. She only got to where she is because she's pretty. She doesn't deserve that fame because she's not talented enough to be famous. So those are all messed up mindsets because we all know that fame actually is not determined solely based on talent. So that's another mistake that a lot of people make. They'll say things like, oh, there are more talented, unambiguous dark skinned black women who should be more famous. Okay, then make them famous. Why are you guys all talking about Ice Spice's one random song that you feel didn't do as good as the other song? Why is nobody promoting Normani's album that's about to come out on June 14th? Why is no one congratulating Cynthia Everett on getting cast in Wicked? Why is nobody focusing on the hundreds, if not thousands, of unambiguous artists that are more talented than Ice Spice who are probably underground right now and would love to have some coverage on these major YouTube channels? And this is why I do not take the black community seriously online when they talk about things like colorism, because this is not about social justice. This is about social status. Oftentimes, people will hide behind colorism talking points so that they can avoid criticism. Like in the case of Normani, people don't want me to critique her because she's unambiguous, as if that is some kind of handicap or something, which I don't believe it is. But other people reveal their internalized anti-blackness, and they also reveal their internalized pedestalization of people with Ice Spice's phenotype by expecting her to be perfect. Notice how people did the same exact thing with Beyonce. It was, oh no, Beyonce, she needs to show us her real hair. Oh no, that's not her real hair. Oh, Beyonce's brands always flop. Ivy Park flopped, Sacred flopped, everything's a flop. So it's like, okay, Beyonce is the most decorated artist of all time, if I'm not mistaken. She's won literally hundreds of Grammys, and instead of giving credit where credit is due, or just being quiet and focusing on a darker skinned, unambiguous woman with a hair care line. No, you have to point out the teeny tiny flaws and say, oh, well, she flops at everything she does. It's interesting that people love calling out the quote unquote privileged girls in the industry whenever they quote unquote flop, aka they have a song that's not as good as their last one, or you've won hundreds of Grammys, but that doesn't matter because you still flopped with your hair care line. So this type of behavior online actually proves my point, because oftentimes if somebody views you as the pretty girl or more privileged, those type of people where if you're the pretty girl at work, they have to call out that you have a pimple on your face. They have to call out that you've gained some weight. They have to call out what they perceive as a flaw because it humanizes you. So a lot of people will deify you so much and put you on such a high pedestal to the point where they literally expect you to be perfect in every area. But then if you give that same energy to a community that views themselves as at the bottom, then people call it punching down. They'll say, well, you're punching down on Normani, or you're looking down on this person. You're being colorist against this person. What keeps people at the bottom is lack of resilience. And what people don't realize is when you critique people like Ice Spice or Beyonce or Saweetie or any of these artists, if those women themselves, if they know how to transmute energy, like if they know how to take your critique and become a better artist or respond to you and like talk shit in their music, or they use it as fuel, they use it as ambition, if they know how to transmute that energy, you're actually building their pedestal even higher without even realizing it. And so a lot of times when people say so-and-so has privilege in the industry, I'm not negating that colorism exists. I'm not going to say like, oh, this doesn't exist or whatever, but I am going to say that sometimes the more you critique someone and the more you talk about them, the more famous you're actually making them. I've said multiple times, I would have no idea who Ice Spice is or Mariah the Scientist or all these other mixed race or lighter skinned artists if it weren't for the black social media content creators making so much content critiquing them. I mean, you're literally promoting them by critiquing them. And another thing that people say is, oh, anytime a mixed race woman or a light skinned woman gets famous, her 15 minutes of fame runs out. Her music is repetitive. They're saying the same thing about Tyla. Like, oh, her fame is going to run out. Her music is repetitive. She's going to flop. Every month there's a new light skinned woman and then she like falls off. And it's like, first of all, that's very interesting that as a non-light-skinned person that you are tracking and counting how many light-skinned people there are. So that's interesting. Number two, it's also interesting how anytime someone in the industry is deemed as privileged, you've got people pocket watching them. They're clocking everything they do. They're like, oh, you use these same lyrics in a previous song. And it's like, wow, I've never even memorized 4 songs that a person has created because I don't put them on that high of a pedestal. I'm not looking at their lyrics from this song and the last song and the song before that and how many times did they say like, how many times did they say this, because people are saying that Ice Spice says like too much in her music and they don't like that she says like. And it's like, okay, I've never been so obsessed with someone to the point where I'm going to police them using the term like, or I'm going to police the slang that they use and I'm going to critique the type of slang that they use. But notice how people don't do that with unambiguous artists in the industry. Like on social media, they don't make entire videos saying, oh, Kelly Rowland said the word motivation too many times. Or, they don't say stuff like that. They're not paying attention. That's the problem. It's because they are actually contributing to the invisibility of the unambiguous monoracial dark-skinned black women in Hollywood right now. They're contributing to their invisibility by choosing to create content and videos about light-skinned women instead, or about mixed race women instead. So they're ignoring Normani or whoever else is coming out with music, all these other rappers, Cleo, Trappa, Cash Doll, I don't know, Asian Doll. So they're ignoring all of these women so that they can pinpoint, oh, hey, Ice Spice, I know that you're a multimillionaire at this point and you've been nominated for multiple Grammys, and I know that you were working with Nicki Minaj and Taylor Swift. Oh, but I'm going to ignore all of that so that I can point out this one little flaw in your career, which is that this song that you just put out, it wasn't as good as your last songs. You've had multiple #1 hits, Ice Spice, and so therefore I put you on such a high pedestal that I require every song that you release to be a #1 hit. Oh, you didn't have another #1 hit. You must have flopped. But I don't see any of that energy about Normani, who didn't even chart at all. And also for the people saying, oh, well, they only put light-skinned women in the industry, or they only put like these mixed race rappers in the hip hop game. First of all, that's false. There are definitely unambiguous women who have been rapping for decades and who are probably more talented than a lot of the girls who are mainstream. But how do these girls go mainstream? How does Ice Spice blow up? Who's following them on Instagram? Who's liking their pics on Instagram? Who's streaming their music? Who's making YouTube videos about them? Who's talking shit about them? It's the unambiguous, monoracial, dark-skinned black community that's doing it the most. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that in terms of psychology and sociology and marketing, all publicity is still publicity. So you're still increasing that person's fame by like speaking of them and making videos about them and memorizing what types of slang they use in their songs. And another thing I've noticed is that there are content creators who are like, oh, the only thing that made her stand out was that wig. She's wearing a wig. That's a red wig. That's a curly wig. That's an afro wig. And I find that interesting as well, because if I were to pull up pictures of Normani and Coco Jones and try to constantly call out their wigs, then people get mad at me and they're like, oh, well, that's not fair. Like, everybody wears wigs. Okay, so if everybody wears wigs, why do we feel the need to call out when Ice Spice in particular is wearing a curly afro wig? Wouldn't you be happy that she's representing a hair texture that is, I don't know, type 3 or kind of like more curly and coily? Isn't that good? Like, why do we have to randomly call out her wigs? I've noticed that whenever I call out wigs on this channel, people will be like, oh, well, you need to mind your business. Like, what black women do with their hair is none of their business. They can wear whatever hairstyles they want. Okay, so then why is it that black content creators feel the need to call out Ice Spice's wig? I've noticed that there's this tendency to call out beauty enhancements whenever you think that that woman is prettier than you or is on more of a pedestal than you. Then of course you have to call out that it's fake. You have to make it known that it's fake. And the only reason that I call this stuff out is so that I can point out the hypocrisy, because this channel is very much a keep the same energy type of channel. Okay, so people have the right to critique my space. People have the right to critique whoever they want, and I have the right to respond. So my response is, if people get to obsess over Ice Spice and say, oh, she flopped on this song, then I get to say Normani flopped on her career. She flopped on her career in music. Also, let's look at Normani's achievements and Grammy nominations in comparison to Ice Spice. Once again, nobody's talking about this. And my thing is, if the unambiguous black community spent as much energy supporting people who look like them, like naturally, maybe like Ari Lennox or somebody like that, if they spent as much time promoting and critiquing and making videos about people like that, there wouldn't be this problem of getting erased. And so people don't understand that with every person they click on, with every person they follow on Instagram, with every person whose music they hate listen to, with every moment that you hate watch YouTube channels like this one, who do not center unambiguous mono dark skinned black women, you're actually still popularizing that channel. You're still popularizing that type of music. And these white executives of these record labels and these music distribution companies, they wouldn't put out a product, which is the artist, they wouldn't put out that product if they knew, hey, I'm going to lose money. No, that person would get dropped from the label because they would say, hey, you're not making us money. And so there's a reason why the industry puts out artists like Ice Spice or, I don't know, Lotto and all these other people. It's because they know the unambiguous community likes to live vicariously through women like that, likes to listen to women like that, likes to one drop those women into unambiguous blackness, to make shit talking videos about their careers, which actually helps more people to listen to the music to see what shit they're talking about. And so the executives and the marketers in the industry, they know this. And so the more you talk about people, even if it's in a negative way, the more you're actually strengthening and lengthening their career. And another thing is, I find it funny how people are saying that rappers like Ice Spice are a flop or rappers like Sweetie are a flop. Meanwhile, I've noticed there's a tendency to discredit the intelligence of a woman who is pretty. So Ice Spice is pretty, Sweetie is pretty, and there's no way that they can be pretty and smart and talented. And also, since when is there a threshold for talent when it comes to Hollywood? I mean, let's be honest here. Hollywood is filled with untalented people. So why is it such a problem if Ice Spice isn't talented? Why is it such a problem if Sweetie or all these other people are not as talented? But then I'm not allowed to call out Normani or Kelly Rowland for not being as talented as Beyonce. I'm not allowed to call them out because, of course, that's colorist. It's off limits to call out unambiguous women in Hollywood who could be doing better. And another thing that people don't realize is that when you give people these critiques and stuff. And another thing that people don't realize is that when you follow people on social media, that actually helps them to build their brand and like get brand deals and stuff. So if they're getting millions of likes online and you're following them, you're talking about them, you're making YouTube videos about them, they can actually show those numbers, just like what Cardi B said. Cardi B said, I walk into a business office and I show them numbers, and that's how I get these $1 million deals. Cardi B has said that before on her social media. She says that she will take all of the things, all the shit that people talk about her, all the views that she gets and stuff, all the hate watchers. She takes those numbers into the meetings and she says to Fashion Nova or whatever company, hey, just so you know, there are 50 million people watching me. I get a total of this many likes. I get a total of this many people making videos about me every month. This is the amount of publicity that I get. And so now I'm going to get paid. And that's the transmutation that I'm talking about. That is the pretty girl transmutation that I teach on this channel. I talk a lot about how to transmute people's criticism into money for yourself, or you can channel that into your creative artistry, like how Beyonce does, where she just puts things in her music. And then I've noticed that some people will say, oh, well, these people, they have problematic personalities. Like some people are calling Ice Spice a colorist. So they'll be like, oh, well, she has a problematic personality and so she doesn't deserve the fame that she has. And it's like, that's hypocritical because the black community online supports plenty of people who have problematic personalities. Damn near everybody who's in charge of Hollywood as a whole probably has some sort of problematic personality. Don't even get me started on the hidden agendas in hip hop music as a whole. So it's funny how people like to pick and choose who's problematic. They pick and choose who deserves fame, who's talented enough to receive fame, and who isn't. And it's like, we all know that there is no threshold for talent when it comes to Hollywood. We know that there's no threshold. This is about money. Hollywood was created to make money, not to promote talent. So whatever gets them the money, whatever can go viral, that is what Hollywood is going to sell you. That's what the companies are going to pay. They want to advertise to you. They want to influence you with certain ideas. They want to sell certain products to you. So that's what it's all about. It has nothing to do with just talent alone. And also, if people are so concerned about preserving talent and respecting people who are talented and promoting talented people, then where are all the YouTube channels out there that are talking about all the talented, unambiguous artists in the black community? Because I don't see them. Also, another thing that I saw someone say is that every month there's going to be a new light skinned person or a new mixed race person that's going to come and go from the industry. First of all, that's actually a fantastic compliment to say that you believe that there will be 12 new representatives or 12 new artists that will make music who share the phenotypes of women on this channel every single year. So first of all, that's a compliment. Oh, there's a new light-skinned person every month. There's a new mixed race person every month in Hollywood. That's not the diss that you think it is. That's actually really good in terms of representation. And also, notice how people tend to focus on women of other phenotypes or focus on artists of other phenotypes instead of actually supporting the women of their own phenotypes. Have you guys noticed this hypocrisy? What do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.